2825 Saratoga Trail.
Plunder, true crime audio.
544, show me en route.
Copy. It looks like RP is scared of her husband and he broke a glass saying he is acting crazy, no weapons, husband, name, and date of birth in the call.
Plunder, true crime audio.
4 units in route. It looks like the husband is drinking but no drugs.
544, copy.
Frederick 544 units in the route. It looks like the husband is being aggressive and there are also kids in the house.
Followed the rest of the Southwest substation. I'll have a trooper en route with me with 3 juveniles in tow.
Frederick 544 units on scene dispatch status.
562, go for it. Dispatch, Frederick 544, did you status check us? Everyone's code 4. We'll have 1 male in custody, we'll get his ID in a second. You contact the on-call victim's advocate, and either they can respond here, or if they want, they can call my work cell.
Yep, you heard that police audio dispatch correctly. Out of Frederick, Colorado, being summoned once again to that infamous house, 2825 Saratoga Trail in Frederick, Colorado. Beautiful home, haunting home. The home we saw featured in so many body cam videos back in 2018. Yes, it's the home of Chris and Shanann Watts. Well, it used to be until the Millers purchased the home.
Hey, Chris. So we need to have everybody step out of the house.
And can you believe the Millers had to summon the police as well when the husband, quote unquote, started going crazy on the wife? I've been really digging into this because I'm so fascinated by it. Let's explain what happened that day. Shakespeare could not have written such a plot, and sometimes life truly is stranger than fiction. So it was Sunday, February 11th, this year, 2024. It was actually Super Bowl Sunday. Another Sunday when something sinister happened in that house, and the husband began to allegedly, according to these court documents, according to the charges he pled guilty to, act with violence against his wife. And there's even a child abuse charge in here. So the sun had just set about an hour earlier, about 5:30 p.m. in Frederick, Colorado. 1 hour later, as darkness began to fall upon that home, upon that area, trouble was once again afoot. Now, even though the home looks a little different, it's more spruced up from when we saw it being built by Chris and Shanann Watts and how they had it decorated and all the controversy therein, I can't help but wonder if the same wife-hating and child-hating spirit or something is lurking around that house. The dark paint might be gone on the outside, that hideous color that Chris Watts chose. Dark, dark, dark for the front of the home and the back of the home the way it used to be. Well, the Millers lightened it up, but that in and of itself apparently wasn't enough.
I'd like to go through your house. Are you okay with us searching through your house? All right.
And now we're going to learn more. Break up a 12-year marriage and experience a violent night that once again brought cops to the home. It was exactly 2008 days after Chris Watts took the lives of his pregnant wife, Shanann Watts, who was pregnant with their beautiful baby boy, Nico Lee Watts, and he took the life also of his daughters, Bella and Celeste Watts. That tragedy happened sometime Sunday, August 12th, as it bled into Monday, August 13th. 2008 days later, on February 11th, 2024, another would-be tragedy was happening. Thank God it was averted. Thank God no one lost their lives in this altercation. So it all started around 6:32 p.m. So says the Frederick Police Department's offense report. Dispatch aired a disturbance in progress at a redacted home, at least according to the reports, but we heard it there in our ears. It's the Saratoga Trail home. I'd heard rumors and rumblings, and for months I've been tracking down exactly what happened that night. The parties involved were the Millers. Justin Miller is the husband. It's all a matter of public record. His name has been listed in an arrest report right there For February 11th, 2024, there was only one person booked into the Weld County Jail, and that was the husband, Justin Miller, arrested February 11th at 6:53 p.m. We could hear them say one male in custody, and unfortunately, there was a victim's advocate, which would be needed, presumably for Justin's wife, and there were 3 juveniles in tow with the officer. So apparently, the juveniles had to go with the officer, at least temporarily, while this melee broke out, and they got their dad in custody, and their mom was likely getting help. She refused medical attention even though she had a cut. How ominous. Now, people ironically know the Millers. The Millers went viral when their realtor posted their photos, and they became known as the couple who bought the home from the Watts, as it were. And there were so many eerie similarities that people began to notice. They got some controversy, they got some backlash. If you want to catch up on all that, check out the playlist of the whole Watts-Miller house case, linked to below. Well, people were hoping that the Millers would be able to fill the Watts home with love. They hoped, okay, Shanann had a dream. Shanann wanted to live happily ever after with her husband, Chris Watts, and her children, 2 girls and a boy. Chris Watts interrupted that plan. Demonically, he did not let that happen. Now he's serving the rest of his life in prison, as he should. So it was full of hope when the Millers went through so much to purchase that home. They got that home, they moved in, and they took an eerie photo which people couldn't help but compare to Chris and Shanann. Mrs. Miller was standing there in Shanann's kitchen, as it were, with the cabinets that Shanann's dad helped install and all of that. She stood there with some kind of black shirt. It was kind of off the shoulder, I guess. Next to her husband, he had a beard, and the 2 older girls and the little boy, the baby boy. People couldn't help but compare them to the Watts, of course, because they were a young, beautiful couple full of hopes and dreams with their 3 children standing in Shanann's kitchen. The Millers appeared to be the continuation of what Shanann would have had if her husband had acted right, acted in a godly manner, not cheated on her and not killed the entire family. They could have been standing there still in that kitchen with their 2 girls and their little boy. Well, the Millers were standing there instead, and people had a lot to say about it, so much so that Mrs. Miller clapped back and she defended her husband, and she defended them purchasing the home. It was a long spiel. Check for it in my previous video. Well, now I could barely believe it when I saw what happened this night. Let's read all 6 PDFs that the police department sent to me. And if you want to read them yourselves, because I don't tend to scroll anything on the screen anymore because you never know what YouTube might like and what they might not like, look for the links to the PDFs below in my previous video. So this is what happened. The Frederick Police Department offense report, and we might see some familiar names here from some of the officers who also worked on the Watts case, which is very helpful in seeing just different viewpoints. It's almost like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The 4 first books of the New Testament, they each reveal a little bit of a perspective, a different person's perspective of what happened during Jesus' time on earth. Well, these reports may feature some familiar names from some officers, maybe some who aren't, but it tripped me out that immediately upon hearing that Saratoga Trail address, officers responded. As soon as they heard a husband was going crazy in that infamous home, which was the site of so much tragedy, maybe they had a little bit of PTSD or something. So this first report from Officer Ed Goodman speaks of the date and time of the offense occurring on February 11th, 2024 at 6:32 p.m. Justin would end up being charged with harassment, obstruction of telephone or telegraph service, child abuse, acted knowingly or recklessly where no death or injury results, and domestic violence definitions. There's a lot of redactions, so you will hear me saying a lot of blanks or not saying the person's name or assuming who they're talking about. Now, this first victim, who's a witness, I believe it could be the wife, it's a person with blonde hair, green eyes, 5 feet 4 inches tall, and weighs 135 pounds. This report was approved by Officer Scott Coonrod, and that's definitely a name I remember from the Watts days. And it also lists the person arrested, who we presume, of course, Well, we don't have to presume. He's listed in the Frederick Police Department records. Justin Miller, he's 6 feet tall and 200 pounds. On Sunday, February 11th, 2024 at approximately 6:32 p.m., dispatch aired a disturbance in progress at blank, that infamous home. Of course, this is going to leave viewers asking the same questions again and again we've been asking for years. Is that home haunted? The suspect and 2 victims would later be identified to me verbally as blank blank. So, the wife had advised dispatch of some of the following. She'd had friends over. Justin thinks she's cheating on him, then broke a wine glass. Justin was acting crazy. Yes, there had been drinking, but no drugs. Justin is being aggressive. Someone is vacuuming the broken glass. Their kids are in the house. She is crying. Justin gets really angry and does this. She was scared Justin would take the kids and leave. Justin is really scary when he is mad. Justin took her phone and threw it before she could call 911. She did not want him around her anymore. I arrived on scene after other officers had already made contact with blank, and I was advised that Justin was in the garage. I went into the garage and made contact with Justin and Frederick Officer Fountain, and as I did so, he explained the following. He and his wife had been married for 12 years. Tonight, his wife and her friend, only identified as Bonnie, had been up in the loft. Now we're going to learn about there's cameras up there. We remember that loft, that infamous loft, where the girls, Cece and Bella, used to jump and play. Shanann had her Pittsburgh Steelers blankets and everything up there. We're going to learn about all the video cameras that Justin has trained on that area. He saw his wife cheat on him with Bonnie on camera when Bonnie and his wife had kissed. Bonnie had turned and looked in his direction and then kissed his wife. He confronted his wife and he was upset. He slapped the glass his wife had been holding out of her hand. Now, Justin voluntarily showed a recorded video he had on his phone, which he said was from that night, and 2 females could be seen sitting close to each other on a couch. One female, he identified her as Bonnie, turned and looked towards the camera, then turns to face his wife and kisses her quickly on the lips. Now, of course, we haven't seen that video yet. If we get all the discovery and the videos I've requested, we might see it. Won't it be weird to see inside that house once again, but different people in there and a different crime case happening? It sounds like this woman, Bonnie, did this on purpose. The wife is going to talk about not having drank this much wine usually, having a few glasses. The husbands are downstairs, I guess, watching the Super Bowl. Maybe it hadn't started yet or whatever, pre-gaming. And the wife and kids may have been upstairs. Maybe some kids were downstairs. But it sounds like since this woman, Bonnie, knew that all these cameras were around, she knew she was being watched. She looked directly at the camera, then turned and planted a kiss on Justin's wife. Maybe she was just trying to get his goat or something, I don't know. I then went to speak with the wife, who was speaking with Frederick Sergeant Flunker. As I spoke with her, she made statements that she was afraid of her husband, and that tonight, when he confronted her, he had smacked a wine glass out of her hand, knocking it to the floor. She pointed down to the carpet, where I observed a red stain, which she identified as the red wine that had been in her glass. She also showed me her right middle finger, and on the inside, the side next to her ring finger, I observed what appeared to be a small, fresh abrasion, which is kind of sad that there was kind of something harmful, a little cut or something, bruise, no matter what. This is why later when Justin went to court, watch my previous video where I explained what happened in court. Maybe that's why he felt so remorseful. No matter what was happening, whether Bonnie was jokingly kissing his wife or not, he understood. I believe he realized he had no right to get physical with his wife and smack some wine glass out of her hand, make the glass shatter, and even hurt her finger. I again went to the garage where Officer Fountain was still in contact with blank and blank, and made a claim that while he had been away on a recent work trip, there had been another meeting between Bonnie and his wife at the house which had upset him. So apparently Justin was away on some work trip, I don't know what he does, I forget, and he was upset that this woman Bonnie was visiting his wife. After further investigation, I was advised that he and his wife had been married for 12 years and had 3 children together, and all 3 children were biologically both of theirs. Now, when they talk about talking with Justin, the husband, in the garage, I can just see every single video almost that Shanann recorded. It's like I almost know that house better than my own in some ways. I remember when the alarm was going off. It was that Christmas where Chris Watts had dressed up as Santa, and then he had forgotten a phone. So Shanann had to walk through the house, and she was criticizing him for forgetting the other phone. And she's on Facebook Live, and you can hear the garage alarms going off. And of course, we remember the infamous video that's been played almost everywhere when Chris Watts arrived home that fateful Monday, August 13th, 2018, and led cops in. Well, he walked in first, and he went into Shanann's car, into the Lexus, and did something, who knows what. But we remember all that body cam footage of the garage. Now imagine cops again standing there. They had to have flashbacks, PTSD, standing there talking to another husband, trying to calm him down, or trying to see what he did to his wife, trying to see the state of their relationship. I was further advised that only blank had been in the room, having come into the loft at some point and got on the couch up in the loft when blank had confronted blank and Bonnie about the incident. So Justin must have confronted his wife and Bonnie about the incident, and perhaps only those 2 women were up in the loft. I was further advised when Justin slapped the glass out of his wife's hand, someone had seen it and became quite upset and was crying. Now this is where I'm wondering, is this where the child abuse charge comes in? Did one of the children see his or her dad slap the wine glass out of their mother's hand and start crying? I was further advised that blank had not seen the incident or been affected, as they had been downstairs along with a neighbor and his 12-year-old daughter. So the other 2 children likely did not witness the incident. While explaining the arrest to blank, she was crying and made statements that she was scared of blank, as well as having concerns about her financial concerns. Boy, here we go again. Another couple moving into that house, purchasing it for $600,000. Boy, doesn't it make you flash back to Shanann and Chris, and of course all their money problems, all the controversy about spending, about MLMs like Thrive by Lavelle that Shanann was selling, how they were underwater on their mortgage, or just behind on their mortgage, months and months. They hadn't paid their HOA fees. They were able to get a 401k loan of $10,000 from Chris Watts's 401k to kind of catch up on their mortgage, but I think it was going to be behind again. We've gone over all their bankruptcy woes in the past, and now we have another wife in this house where they worked and worked and worked. According to the realtor, it must have taken a lot of doing for this couple, the Millers, to get into that home. But whatever they did, obviously they qualified for it and they were able to move in. And now this year, months ago, just over 6 months ago, we have another wife standing here talking to cops. Too bad Shanann couldn't make it to the point where she was there talking to the cops. We have this woman standing here talking to the cops, quote, having concerns about her financial concerns. So if you read between the lines a lot, this wife was scared of her husband, and she has 3 children, and I can't help but flash back to Shanann texting her friends, how will I get divorced in Colorado and take care of 3 kids on my own? Shanann had her own financial concerns. And now we have this woman almost walking out the path of Shanann. Maybe that's why she resonated with this home, or the case, or the story. People accused her of trying to be like Shanann. I'm not accusing her of that at all, but maybe she felt what they call those invisible ties or something like that to the case, and maybe that's why she ended up there. She had this fear of her husband. She's worried about financial concerns, likely as a mom would be worried about 3 children. I believe this couple may have divorced if they didn't reconcile. I know the wife in court, she was only over the phone, not in person, and she talked about keeping separate orders, kind of like a protection order or such, only being able to allow Justin to come to the home to pick up his stuff when she was not there. Back to the report. I advised Mrs. Miller to let the VA know of her concerns, and the VA would be able to make her fears known to the judge and district attorney. So the VA is the victim's advocate. You could hear them calling for it over the dispatch. They need a victim's advocate. And of course, my mind flashed to Hazel, the victim's advocate who was helping Nicole Kessinger. Justin, meanwhile, was arrested for the following offenses. Like we said, harassment, obstruction of telephone, child abuse, domestic violence. See other officer reports for further information, and each report does give us more info, slightly different viewpoints. Mrs. Miller was provided with a VRA pamphlet, and victim's advocate, E. Wolf, responded to the scene to meet with her. So it's not Hazel, it was a different victim's advocate. This report is not a verbatim accounting, and body-worn camera video recording available for detail. End of report, cleared by arrest. That's Officer Goodman's report with the Frederick Police Department. Regarding that body-worn camera, I've requested Justin's booking photo and all the body cam videos. You guys know my history with Colorado. Lord willing, if God, in Jesus' name, wants it released, it will be released. I've requested it. We'll see what happens. There's a supplemental report from Officer Sarah Flunker. They have a witness's name, Bonnie, and I won't tell her last name. She refused to give her home address, which I don't blame her. She has brown hair, brown eyes. She's 5 feet 2 inches tall and weighs 128 pounds. There's another victim or witness complaint, and it's all redacted. Several others, in fact 3 or 4 others, so I'm wondering if those are the children or other children, juveniles, who may have witnessed what happened. Now, Officer Flunker says on Sunday, 11th of February 2024, at approximately 6:31 hours, I, Sergeant Flunker, while in full police uniform and in a fully marked police vehicle, heard officers being dispatched to blank, that Saratoga Trail home, state of Colorado. Dispatch advised there was a physical disturbance involving a husband and wife where the husband knocked a wine glass out of his wife's hand and was being very confrontational. There were children in the home and he was following her around the house. Upon arrival, I observed the front windows of the residence to be open and the lights on in the front room. So we can just imagine that porch and those front windows and the front room. I observed a male, later identified as Justin Miller, standing in the front room. As I walked up to the residence, someone closed the blinds and opened the front door. I called out his name, Justin, to which he replied, I am. He stated his wife, later identified as Mrs. Miller, I'll just keep calling her, was inside and he knew police had been called. Justin asked to go inside to put shoes on. I asked if we could come inside, which he stated we could, so there is footage apparently of them inside this house. He indicated that his wife was upstairs. I proceeded upstairs and observed his wife to be crying and speaking to someone on the telephone. Imagine again seeing body cam footage of cops ascending that same staircase, the same staircase that Chris Watts drug his pregnant wife down after strangling her. I advised Mrs. Miller that if she was on the phone with 911, she could hang up now. She was extremely upset and crying. She told me the following in response to my questions. Her and Justin have been married for 12 years and have 3 children together. They had friends over this evening to watch the Super Bowl. Mrs. Miller and her friend Bonnie were upstairs playing video games. Both were sitting on a love seat. Bonnie leaned over to kiss her on the cheek at the same time that Mrs. Miller turned her face to her. The kiss landed on her lips. I believe another officer came upstairs and had Justin go to the garage with him. Once in the garage, Justin accused his wife of cheating on him with Bonnie. He showed someone surveillance footage of the incident between Bonnie and his wife, as there is a camera that points in that direction. Someone had been drinking beers, someone stated several, and his wife had 3 glasses of wine. Justin continued to yell at his wife and get in her face. Justin went back upstairs where her son and blank now was, along with Bonnie. So I'm assuming this is before the officers got there, so I don't know who came upstairs and had who go into the garage with him. Maybe Justin grabbed a different guy before the police got there and said, look at this, Bonnie kissed my wife. Someone was now sitting on the love seat playing a video game, and Bonnie and Mrs. Miller were standing behind the love seat. Mrs. Miller was holding a glass of wine. Justin came upstairs again and started yelling at both his wife and Bonnie. Justin then hit his wife's hand with the wine glass in it, knocking the wine glass to the carpeted floor, shattering the glass. He had to knock it pretty hard if it's a carpeted floor and the glass still breaks. Justin then went into their bedroom and took his wife's cell phone and took it downstairs. She believed this was so she could not call police. Justin continued to yell at his wife and Bonnie, telling Bonnie to leave. Bonnie and her husband, who had been downstairs during the incident, left the resident. So I guess Bonnie and her husband didn't see Justin knocking the glass out of his wife's hand. Mrs. Miller was able to locate her cell phone and called 911. She stated multiple times that she was very afraid of Justin and did not know how far he would take things. I can't even imagine being in that home, knowing what Chris did to Shanann in that home. All of a sudden, her own husband, as she puts it, is going crazy, acting aggressively, and is knocking a wine glass out of her hand. And she's afraid of him and she doesn't know how far he'll take it. She did not feel safe with Justin in the house. She did not believe he would hurt the children, but did believe he might hurt her. Boy, that's sad. Other officers were speaking with Justin in the garage while I was upstairs with the wife. I photographed her right middle finger where I observed some redness. She stated it did not hurt, but the marks were caused by Justin hitting the wine glass out of her hand. She refused medical treatment when offered. I also photographed the wine stain on the carpet where she stated the wine glass had fallen. Someone had already cleaned up all the glass prior to our arrival. It was probably her. I later uploaded the photographs to evidence.com. So here's praying in Jesus' name they give me an evidence.com link soon. Officer Goodman came upstairs and spoke with the wife. I briefly advised him of my conversation with her. I advised him someone was also upstairs during this incident. Officer Goodman returned to the garage, and I heard officers air over police radio that Justin was placed into custody at approximately 6:53 p.m. I asked Mrs. Miller to remain upstairs while I checked on everyone downstairs. I spoke briefly with Blank, who stated Blank knocked the glass out of Mrs. Miller's hand and was yelling at her. He was visibly upset. So there was some other witnesses there. There were other adults there because it was a Super Bowl party. So this man was upset. He knew that Justin knocked this wine glass out of his wife's hand. I spoke with the Miller's other children, I believe, who both stated they did not witness the incident, but they heard the yelling and the glass breaking. A next-door neighbor and his daughter had also been downstairs during the incident. Someone stated he heard the argument and the glass breaking, but did not believe Justin would do anything to hurt his family. Isn't it crazy and eerie how that's the same thing so many people said about Chris Watts? Once Justin had been removed from the residence, I advised his wife of his arrest. She was both upset and visibly relieved. I can imagine that feeling, like upset and worried about him and the situation, but also relieved that he's away and he's going to be locked up at least temporarily. I asked her if there were any weapons in the house or if Justin had access to any guns. She stated they had recently sold their last gun, so there were none in the house that she was aware of. That's a blessing with a guy acting kind of off the chain like he was acting. It's a good thing that they didn't have any weapons in the house. I explained to her what the next steps would be and was advised by Officer Goodman that a victim advocate had been contacted and was on their way to the residence to speak with her and the children. Blank stated he would remain with her until the victim advocate arrived. Blank provided me with Bonnie's phone number. I spoke with Bonnie over the telephone. She told me the following in response to my questions. Mrs. Miller and Bonnie were upstairs playing video games when Justin comes up. Blank, leave that area and go somewhere else. I don't know what that means. It's redacted. When she comes back, she tells Bonnie that Justin is freaking out. So I guess a couple of people, it must be Justin and the guy, leave that area and go somewhere else. Perhaps when the wife comes back, she tells Bonnie that Justin is freaking out. Justin then comes back upstairs, yells at both of them, smacks the wine glass out of her hand, causing it to break, and gets glass everywhere. This causes the wife to start crying while Justin is still yelling at them and telling Bonnie to leave while accusing Mrs. Miller of cheating on him. Someone then brings up a vacuum cleaner upstairs and cleans up the broken glass. That makes sense because, with wine and glass and kids, it doesn't mix. Broken glass, you got to get that stuff up right away. Even though, of course, it is evidence. I guess the smarter thing to do would be like, okay, kids, okay, everyone stay away from the glass. You don't necessarily think about the cops needing to take videos of that evidence. Bonnie states that Mrs. Miller believes Justin is going to hurt her but won't leave because she won't leave the children there. So obviously Mrs. Miller is worried about Justin hurting her, but she doesn't want to, of course, abandon her children. Maybe that's why she stayed in the marriage. I don't know what their history was. Bonnie stated Justin never touched her and she was not injured. Bonnie was concerned about giving her address as she did not want blank to find out where she lived. Maybe Bonnie was like, look, I don't want Justin to know where I live because I saw the way he just treated his wife, so no. I let blank know that I had spoken with Bonnie. At the time of this report, I have no further involvement in this case. See other officers' report for further info, I guess. I recorded this contact with my body-worn camera and later uploaded my BWC footage to evidence.com. So there's another video there, probably just of the officer during the phone call over the speakerphone. We have to get there. So that'd be video number 2. Now we have another, I did these in chronological order. We have a report from Officer Anthony Fountain with Frederick PD. On February 11th, 2024 at about 6:32, Officer Fountain, was dispatched to this house located in Frederick, Colorado, we already know, on the report of a disturbance. Dispatch advised the reporting party was in an altercation with her husband, was afraid of him, he'd broken a glass because he thought his wife was cheating on him. Upon arrival, I spoke with Justin in the garage of the residence. He advised the following. They had a group of friends over to watch the Super Bowl. The husbands were downstairs watching the game while the kids were upstairs in the loft. Mrs. Miller and her friend Bonnie, he says, unknown last name nor date of birth, had left their husbands and went upstairs with each other. Justin wanted to check on the kids, so he pulled the loft camera up on his phone. While watching the camera in the loft, Justin saw his wife and Bonnie kiss. Justin continued explaining he's been married to his wife for 12 years and they have 3 children together. He said he was upset because he has been with his wife for so long and she was cheating on him. Justin confronted someone alone in the garage about the kiss she shared with Bonnie. So Justin must have taken his wife down to the garage and confronted her. And then next, someone entered the residence and he told Bonnie and her husband to leave. So he must have brought his wife down to the garage and then he went back into the house. Maybe Mrs. Miller went back upstairs. But Justin's like telling Bonnie and her husband to get out of there. At this point, Justin was standing near his wife with her glass of wine in her hand. Justin stated he swatted the glass of wine out of his wife's hand. The glass broke, and he did so because he was, quote, emotional over the whole incident. So Justin admitted, look, this freaked me out. I pulled up this camera. They have cameras even on the inside of the house, which is kind of creepy but understandable. They have young kids. It's a famous house. You have looky-loos. You don't know who might want to even break in there, so I get it. But he saw his wife unexpectedly with this other woman. Allegedly, they kissed, and so he ran up there, acted emotionally, and smacked the wine glass out of her hand. At least he admitted the truth. Officer Goodman and I took Justin into custody, double locking each handcuff and checking for tightness. I transported Justin to the Northern Jail Complex, NJC. So that's the Weld County Jail. That's where we saw Chris Watts go into. Justin asked what he was being charged with, and I advised him harassment, obstruction of telephone services, and child abuse. Justin stated the children were not around when he swatted the wine glass out of his wife's hand. The children were in the basement. Oh, that basement. We know that basement too. It looks a little bit different, a little bit better from the photos since the house is for sale once more and it's less cluttered. Justin was released to the custody of booking staff without incident. So I do believe, I think if memory serves, check my previous video. I do believe one of these charges may have been dropped. I don't know if he struck a deal to plead guilty. Maybe the child abuse charge was dropped because he's saying here the kids didn't even witness it, whereas other officers' reports make it sound like one of the kids did. I'm not sure. Please see Officer Gutman's report for further details. All of my Axon body camera footage was uploaded to evidence.com. Please refer to footage for a more exact reference of the incident. Yes, I do. I do want to. Let's hope and pray I get it. Any muted portions of the body camera footage were done for tactical administrative purposes. End of report. Nothing further at this time. So that's Officer Fountain's report. Now we just have a few more, and these are all pretty quick, only one-pagers. So Officer Ed Goodman wrote a supplemental report the next day, February 12th, at around 4:28 p.m. So he's saying on Monday, February 12th, 2024, upon returning to work to write this supplemental narrative to add some details, I attempted to review my body-worn camera footage. At that time, I was unable to locate any recording from my body-worn camera. He's saying it had not activated for some unknown reason. In the end, he's going to realize he had a different officer's camera. That's why he couldn't find it. But what he wanted to document here is that both Justin and his wife, I believe, exhibited signs of intoxication to include bloodshot and watery eyes, odors of unknown alcoholic beverages on their breaths, and slurred speech. Mrs. Miller explained to me that she does not usually drink and admitted to me that this night she had drank 3 glasses of wine. She had also explained that Justin had gotten her phone before she had been able to call the police. And when I asked her if she'd had any other way to call the police after Justin had taken her phone, she told me that was her only phone. It should be noted that there were 3 other adults in the residence at this time, as they had the guests over to watch the football game. Even though I had not confirmed it, it could be assumed that there were possibly other phones available to her. So there were 3 other adults in the house, and Officer Goodman is saying, well, if it were really dire straits, she could have asked some other person to call 911, but eventually she must have gotten her phone back and called 911. Obviously, I've requested that call too, and can you imagine seeing another man handcuffed in that Saratoga Trail home and being led away? Even though that wasn't where Chris Watts was arrested. He was arrested, of course, down at the station when he was being interrogated all day and being given pizza to eat and having his back rubbed, and his dad came in there and everything. But just imagine seeing this guy, Justin, my husband, there being put in cuffs at that famous house. And he's gonna clap back at these officers too. I don't know, I guess he felt treated unfairly or something. This is Officer Goodman's supplemental report, also from February 12th. He says, on Monday, February 12th, 2024, at approximately 6:12 p.m., dispatch received a request, apparently from Justin, I guess, for a civil standby so he could pick up some of his essentials. Justin advised he had just been released from NJC, that complex, that Weld County Jail complex, and he was headed to the 7-Eleven on State Highway 52. I contacted Justin, who provided me with a list of the items he wanted. I then contacted Mrs. Miller, who agreed to put Justin's requested items in his truck. I met with Justin at the 7-Eleven, and we then went to the house so he could pick up his personal and work trucks. So once again, here's another kind of similarity. He has a personal vehicle and a work vehicle. Now, just like Chris Watts, they had their so-called personal vehicle, that Lexus from Laval, and he had his APC work truck. Justin had complained that his wife had now blocked his access to the cameras that are mounted throughout the interior of the house and had deleted all the videos. I will note here that Mrs. Miller had told me earlier that she had no idea about how to control the recordings and that the video cameras were a Justin thing and he had been the one to set them up. So he's complaining here. His wife is, getting rid of his ability to view what's going on in the house, and I guess his wife is like, look, you're not going to be watching me anymore. Justin continued complaining that his wife had deleted all the proof he'd had. Justin also made the remark that the interior camera does not record, but that he had to bring up the live view to record. Justin and I discussed whether the courts had made mention to him about his being able to or not have the ability to remote into his house's video cameras. And instead of answering me, he said that his wife had kicked him out of the video feed account. So now I can't even see my kids, quote. So this Officer Goodman, is trying to say, look, Justin, did the court tell you anything about whether or not you're allowed access still, to view what's going on remotely in your house? So he doesn't answer. Justin doesn't answer the cop. He just says his wife kicked him out of the video feed account and, quote, so now I can't even see my kids. Justin then made the accusation, quote, you guys didn't even hear me out. You didn't let me talk and explain anything before you came down. The cop said I explained to Justin that he had been speaking with Officer Fountain, and he made the accusation that I was doing it again and wouldn't let him talk. This should be some good body cam video if this is recorded. I explained to him that I was just explaining to him because he was telling me I did not listen to him, and that he had been trying to explain his point, and that I didn't even want to listen to him. I further told him not to tell me we had not listened to him because we did, and he said, quote, you didn't. Justin continued and said that we had not, quote, listened to my side before you just automatically threw me in a pair of handcuffs. No, I think the cops did the right thing, and I don't know if this is actually on body cam or not. If a husband is being aggressive with his wife and physically knocking a wine glass out of her hand, shattering it, yelling at her, upsetting people, adults and children around them, even if they were both intoxicated, Justin admitted to getting physical with his wife, so I applaud these cops for diffusing the situation by arresting Justin. Justin continued to try and log into the interior cameras and told me he was locked out of them and that he couldn't show me what had happened or all the video of everything that had happened, about what had started all of this, her doing what she had been doing. At that statement, I explained to Justin that we had seen all that, the video the previous evening. So I hope that's captured on body cam, and that it was noted in my report of what he had shown us. I then asked him if he remembered showing us the video and reiterated that I had seen the video and had noted it in my report. I further explained to Justin that he had not been able to show us any other video the previous night. So it says at that point, a neighbor arrived and helped remove both his vehicles. So I guess his personal and his work vehicle were removed to another location. I cleared the scene with no issues, end of report. So I don't know if he had his body cam activated there. Now the final report, again, read them all below if you want to visibly look at them. Written by Officer Goodman on February 20th, 2024 around 7:11 p.m. This is when he found his body cam video footage. Officer Goodman wrote on Tuesday, February 20th, 2024, I was advised by Frederick Detective Walgie, I think it is. It's another name we know from the Watts case. We've seen it all over Discovery. That he had located my body-worn camera video footage from this incident, which I thought had not been recorded for an unknown reason. The recording had, in fact, been made, but it appears that I had inadvertently been using Detective Walgie's body-worn camera. The supplemental report documents that the body-worn recording of my interactions on the night of the incident have been uploaded and saved to evidence.com and are available for viewing. So we'll see when we get a look at that. And I gotta thank my viewer Sal for keeping me honest and keeping me on top of this. Only when she emailed me again about this, the Watts house, not only having a sale pending, but now it being back for sale, as if that sale had fallen through or something. By her pricking my memory about this, I was like, wait a minute, what happened to all that body cam footage I had requested months ago from this particular incident? So it helped me follow up and perhaps do things more correctly. Hopefully we will see. But now this famous house is for sale once again. The price has been cut nearly $25,000, and this house on Saratoga Trail is now, as of today, Saturday, July 13th, for sale, nearly $725,000. It has 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, is more than 6,000 square feet. You can do a 3D tour. There's lots of photos up, and somewhere it says in here, if you're doing like a tour, don't expect to be taking video. You know, like TikTok stars and YouTubers, we can't go over there and say, I want to see this house and go live while we're in there and start getting all this footage. But it's eerie and sad. It reminded me of this verse, Ephesians 6:10 through 6:13. Finally be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God, the full armor of God, so that you can make your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this world's darkness, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore take up the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you will be able to stand your ground, and having done everything to stand. It reminded me of this case because it's nothing to play with. What happened to Shanann and Bella and Cece and little Nico Lee Watts, it's horrific. It's something I still think about all these years later. It's not to excuse Chris Watts, of course, for any actions. It's not like, oh, the devil made me do it, ha ha ha, I'm not responsible. It's not coming at the case in that way. But it is caution. I just caution whoever else does indeed purchase this home and decides to move in it, that they have clearly heard from God that it's okay to move in there, that it's okay to buy it, that it's okay to even be there. Could it be an evil spirit in there? It very well could be. I mean, this case is just weird to me. What are the odds? I know some people don't believe in coincidences. I don't believe in coincidences. Some people don't believe everything is like, ooh, spooky. You know, like the body cam video when the cop walked in and you hear the child giggling in the closet. And some people, I just saw it again on Reddit, they're saying, oh yeah, it's this specific doll that the cop or the dog had stepped on. It wasn't anything eerie. Some other people think it's real spooky stuff in there. Maybe it was Nicole Kessinger's presence in there. Who knows what she did in there? Or maybe not. But to me, this is a little too coincidental. It was Shanann and Chris Watts' home. They were the first ones to build it, buy it, fix it up, move in, live there. Horrible, horrific tragedy happened, obviously. And then what are the odds it sits empty so long? The Millers move in 2022. They go viral for moving in. And now, less than 2 years later, they weren't even in that home 2 years. There's this horrible incident where, you know, the husband gets angry and goes up there and gets physical with his wife and ends up with those charges. I know stuff can happen all the time, especially in marriages. But, you know, how many times are the cops called to intervene in something like this where a husband's being violent? And it just so happens to be the same famous murder house that just gripped the entire world in the Chris Watts case. So my point is, I read that scripture and I'm thinking about it and being prayerful over it, that the next couple or whomever moves into that house, you know, take it seriously. Take these things of beyond the veil. You know, I've seen supernatural things. I've seen the Lord has shown me some amazing visions. So I know there's a world beyond this physical, everything we can just see, you know, and touch. There is something beyond. Putting on this full armor of God is real. It's no joke. You know, the helmet of salvation, the breastplate of righteousness, that sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, which is truth, which, you know, the name of Jesus, demons respond to, the belt of truth, the shoes of peace. Boy, I was thinking about when Joyce Meyer said, there's no armor for your backside. That's because God has our backs. Some people, they may feel an urge to buy this Watts home, or even, you know, I've mentioned, oh yeah, you can make it an Airbnb. A lot of people would want to stay there. And I wouldn't do that lightly. I wouldn't invest in it lightly. I wouldn't go visit it lightly. I mean, I would have to be in some serious prayer and fasting to say, okay, God, is this where I should be? Because some people can jokingly say, oh, there's no such thing as evil spirits and there's no such thing as that. A house is a house. Walls, you know, drywall, construction, paint, that's all it is. I could live there. Or other people are like, no way, I could not live there. Going over this case, this husband's reaction, knowing it's the home where Chris Watts was, the violence that occurred therein, the same way so many people were like, Chris Watts was a great husband. He loved his kids. You know, he would never harm his family. And to see this and to see the Millers, what they've gone through, and she's saying her husband was acting crazy as if it was out of sorts, doing it with other people there. Oh my goodness. causing worry and concern and people to grow upset, getting arrested, getting mad that he was arrested, admitting what he did, knocking the wine glass out of his wife's hand, but then claiming the cops didn't hear his side. In court, he seemed more remorseful. I can't show you the video because of Colorado court laws, but he stood there and it looks like I think he still had his beard and had his little like flannel shirt. I don't know what industry he's in, maybe construction or something. I don't know if he's a builder, and I don't know if they actually got divorced. That part I've not been able to find in court records, but it sounded like Mrs. Miller was pretty done. She was, wanting to protect herself and her children. I do wish the best for all the Millers. I hope everyone's okay. I can't imagine how upsetting this was. And I wish the best for whomever goes on to buy this home, and that hopefully they're very cautious, prayerful, and that someone can turn this into a happy home. Well, maybe they can live 20, 30, 40, 50 years, raise a great family. Whoever moves in, of course, they've got to expect some eyeballs on them. People will be driving by, I'm sure. There will still be looky-loos, and there will still be online attention, of course. Now it's a matter of public interest. It just is. That's how it happens with famous houses like the Amityville Horror House or 1122 King Road in Moscow, which is now torn down. If it hadn't been torn down, that's why they tore it down. The infamous house where unfortunately, 4 Idaho lovely people lost their lives. All of this, the house itself, will become the focus. So whoever moves in there, I wish them the best, but make sure they're directly hearing from God's mouth. In Jesus' name, to their ears, to their hearts, to move there. Or else, I don't know, I wouldn't risk it. But it is a beautiful home. Let's hope there's no evil spirits in there, and let's hope a new family can make it a lovely, happy, wonderful home and just live there for a long time. Thanks for watching all this. I'll keep you updated when I get prayerfully more videos, booking photos, 911 calls of this case. Then it should be really interesting for us to watch together. Take care.